I'm sitting here staring at the screen, and my hands are still shaking so much I can barely type. It's almost 2 a.m. My wife, Chloe, is asleep in bed, completely oblivious. And I don't know how I'm ever going to explain this to her, or to anyone for that matter. Because right now, what I'm looking at, it just doesn't make sense. It can't be real. My parents, Richard and Brenda, they've been married for almost 40 years, since they were practically kids themselves. I'm 35, my sister Megan is 32. We have this totally normal, utterly predictable life. My dad worked at the same manufacturing plant for 35 years before retiring last year. My mom was a homemaker, volunteered a lot, garden club stuff. They're good people. Solid. This is just, it's a bomb that's gone off in the quietest room you can imagine. It started innocently enough, just like a lot of stupid things do, I guess. I got myself one of those AncestryDNA kits last year, just out of curiosity. Wanted to see if there was anything spicy in my background, just for fun. Then, for Christmas last year, I thought it would be a cool gift for Mom and Dad. Mom, Brenda, always loved digging into family history. Even had a dusty box of old photo albums and some handwritten notes from her great aunt. Dad, Richard, he was a bit more skeptical, grumbled about spitting in a tube for a company to own his genetics, but he did it for Mom. Always does. That's just who he is. I was the one who set up all their accounts, helped them register the kits, sent them off. I linked mine to theirs as son to Richard and Brenda in the system. Figured it would make building out the family tree easier. Got Mom's results back a few weeks ago. Totally normal. Connected to her side of the family like expected. Then a notification popped up on my phone tonight. Richard's AncestryDNA results are in. I was actually excited. This was the last piece of the puzzle. I poured myself a beer, kicked back on the couch, laptop open, ready to dig into some heritage. I logged into Richard's account first, skimmed the ethnicity estimates, chuckled at the tiny percentage of something unexpected. Then I went to the DNA matches section. I fully expected to see myself listed, obviously, as a parent-child match, and a few of my known cousins on his side. But something was off. My name wasn't there at the top, not even in the close family section. I scrolled down, thinking maybe I'd missed it or the page hadn't loaded right. Nothing. My stomach started to twist. A cold dread, the kind that makes your scalp prickle, crept up my neck. I went back to my own profile, then specifically looked for Richard as a match. And that's when I saw it. Clear as day. A red banner across the top of the relationship prediction for Richard's profile when viewed from my own. No biological relationship detected as father-son. Predicted relationship, none. I reread it. Then again. My beer was forgotten on the coffee table, a cold ring forming on the wood. None. It just said none. And beneath it, in smaller print, something about probability of paternity being 0%. Zero. My mind just couldn't make the words connect. Richard, my dad, this couldn't be right. I've always felt like my life was pulled from a stock photo album. Perfect suburban family, 2 kids, dog, white picket fence. My parents, Richard and Brenda, were high school sweethearts. They met at a football game in the fall of '79. Their senior year at Northwood High, a couple of towns over from where we live now. Dad, Richard, was a decent offensive lineman, quiet but dependable. Mom, Brenda, was on the cheer squad, vivacious and popular. The story, one I've heard countless times over Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings, is that Dad finally got the courage to ask her out after the homecoming dance. Not even at the dance itself. He called her house the next day. Her mom answered, and he almost hung up because he was so nervous. They dated all through their senior year, then went to separate state colleges, only about an hour and a half apart. Weekends were spent driving back and forth, one visiting the other. They got engaged the summer after their junior year of college, a modest little ring from a local jeweler, and married a year after graduating in August of '84. My mom was 22, my dad was 23. They settled in a small starter house in Willow Creek, the town where I eventually grew up. Dad got a job at the local automotive parts factory. Assembly line supervisor by the time he retired. Mom took on part-time bookkeeping work for a while. Then when I came along, she focused on raising us. Megan, my sister, and I had what you'd call an idyllic childhood. We spent summers riding bikes until dusk, winters sledding down the big hill at Miller Park. Dad taught me how to change a tire, how to throw a spiral. Mom taught me to bake a halfway decent apple pie, even if I usually just ate the dough. Our house always smelled faintly of cinnamon and whatever Dad was tinkering with in the garage. They had their routines, too. Every Saturday morning, Dad would drive to the hardware store for some obscure bolt or a new garden hose, then stop at the bakery for a dozen donuts. Mom would have coffee brewing, and we'd all sit around the kitchen table reading the paper, talking about nothing in particular. This was my normal. This was my foundation. Looking back now, through this absolutely shattered lens, I'm racking my brain for anything, any tiny flicker that might have hinted at, well, this. And honestly, there's not much. My parents never fought, not really. Never raised their voices. It was always a very calm household. Dad was always a bit reserved, quiet. Mom was the more expressive one. The one who'd tell long stories and laugh loudly. Maybe I remember Mom having an intense, almost secretive phone call once or twice when I was a kid. She'd go into the pantry or her bedroom and close the door, and her voice would be low, hushed. I just figured it was something about a surprise party or a personal friend thing. Kids don't really question that stuff. Or maybe I didn't. There was one time, I must have been about 7 or 8. We were at a family barbecue, and one of Dad's cousins, a guy named Gary, who was a bit of a loudmouth, started joking about how I didn't look much like Richard. Brenda must have had a strong mailman gene. Hey, Rich? He'd boomed, slapping my dad on the back. Dad just gave a tight, almost forced smile and changed the subject instantly, steering the conversation to the grill. Mom, she shot Gary a look that could curdle milk. Then she swooped in, put an arm around me, and started talking about how I had her eyes, her mother's nose. I remember feeling a bit confused, but it passed. I was just a kid, excited about hot dogs. It was dismissed as Gary being Gary, a bit crass. Another time, maybe when I was in high school, Mom had a small box of old letters and photos tucked away in the back of her closet. I was looking for something, an old yearbook or something, and accidentally knocked it down. She walked in, saw the box, and her face went absolutely white. Not angry, just scared. She quickly gathered it up, muttered something about needing to organize, and tucked it back away. I thought it was just her being particular about her keepsakes. These were never things that registered as red flags at the time. They were just life. Moments that happened. Like, Richard was my dad, Brenda was my mom. They loved each other, they loved us, we were a unit. This was the story I was given, the story I lived, the story I believed with every fiber of my being for 35 years. And now, a stupid little tube of spit and a database on the internet is telling me that almost half of that story is a lie. Not just a lie, but an impossibility. Richard is not my biological father. The words are still echoing in my head, raw and brutal. Richard, my dad, not my dad. How do you even begin to process that? How do you unknow something so fundamental? The days after finding that AncestryDNA result were a blur of denial and morbid fascination. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn red banner. No biological relationship detected. I checked it again and again, refreshing the page like it would magically change. It never did. I even tried uploading the raw data to a couple of other free genealogy sites just to be sure. Same results. 0%. Not even a distant cousin match on Richard's side. It was like his entire lineage just stopped at him as far as my DNA was concerned. I started observing Richard, my dad, with this strange alien perspective. I'd watch him during dinner, how he'd cut his steak meticulously, how he'd always have a second cup of coffee. Things I'd never given a second thought to now felt loaded. Was this just an act? Had he known all along? Did he just play the role? It felt so cruel, so impossibly elaborate. My brain kept cycling through possibilities, each one more far-fetched than the last. Maybe it was a lab error. Maybe he had a twin they didn't know about who donated sperm. No, that's insane. The only logical conclusion, the one my gut clenched around, was the ugliest. My mom had an affair, and Richard wasn't my biological father. I didn't tell Chloe anything for the first week. It felt too big, too raw, too shameful, almost. Like I'd done something wrong. How do you casually drop that bombshell? Hey, honey, guess what? My dad isn't my dad. It just hung in the air, a poisonous cloud. But Chloe's not stupid. She knows me. She started asking what was wrong. You're distant, Liam. What's going on? Are you okay? She'd ask, her brow furrowed with concern. I'd mumble something about stress at work, or just being tired. It wasn't fair to her, I knew that. The guilt was suffocating. After about 10 days, I finally broke down. It was a Saturday morning, the exact time my dad would usually be on his way to the hardware store for donuts. Chloe found me in the kitchen, just staring blankly out the window, a half-empty coffee cup in my hand. Liam, seriously, what is it? You're scaring me. Her voice was soft but firm. I took a deep breath and the words just tumbled out in a rush, disjointed and panicked. The ancestry results, mine and Dad's, they don't... It says he's not my father. Chloe just stared at me for a long moment, her eyes wide, processing. What? Number. That's impossible. A mistake, right? Like a mix-up at the lab. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. I shook my head, my throat suddenly tight. I checked it. Multiple times. Different sites. There's no genetic relationship. 0% chance he's my biological father. She sat down heavily, pulling her hand away to cover her mouth. I could see the shock, then the dawning horror in her eyes. Brenda, your mom. She couldn't even finish the sentence. We sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity. The enormity of it settling in, this unspoken truth hanging between us. The first person I confided in besides Chloe was my best friend, David. We've known each other since kindergarten. He's usually the pragmatic one, the voice of reason. I called him on my lunch break a few days later, just rambling, trying to make sense of it. Dude, I don't know what to do. My whole life is a lie. He listened patiently, quietly, which is rare for David. When I finished, there was a long pause. Liam, man, I don't even know what to say. Are you sure? Like, absolutely 100% sure the test is right? I explained all the cross-checks I'd done. He sighed. Okay. This is big, really big. You have to talk to your mom. You have to? I dreaded that conversation more than anything. My sister Megan was the next hurdle, like we're close. We share everything. But this felt different. This was about our parents, our family. I called her a week after talking to David. I tried to be calm, to lay out the facts. Hey Meg, listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Something really unexpected. I explained the DNA test, how Mom's matched, but Richard's didn't match mine. There was a stunned silence on the other end, then a burst of frustrated laughter. You're kidding, right? This is some kind of prank? Dad? No way. He's literally the most honest man on earth. Her voice was getting sharper, defensive. Liam, you must be wrong. The lab's screwed up. You're going to upset Mom and Dad for no reason. I tried to explain the science, the probabilities, but she wasn't having it. I don't believe it, I just don't. Our family isn't like that. This is insane. She was angry, almost accusing me of making it up. The call ended with her saying she needed to process this insanity and would call me back when she was calmer. She didn't call for 3 days. When she did, she was still skeptical, but the anger had been replaced by a quiet, hurt confusion. So, what does this even mean for us? For Dad? She'd asked, her voice small. A few more days dragged by. The tension at home with Chloe was palpable, even though she was supportive. I couldn't focus at work. My appetite was gone. I knew I couldn't put this off any longer. I had to confront Mom. I decided to do it when Richard was at his weekly poker game with his retired buddies. I drove over to their house one Tuesday evening, my stomach a knot of nerves. The air felt heavy and thick as I walked up the familiar porch steps. Mom opened the door, a warm smile on her face. Liam, what a nice surprise. Come on in. I just made tea. We sat in the living room, the one with the faded floral couch and the mantelpiece lined with family photos. Photos of us. I looked at them, at Richard's smiling face in picture after picture, holding me as a baby, teaching me to ride a bike, graduating high school. It felt like I was staring at a stranger, or at best, a very devoted actor. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding against my ribs. Mom, I started, my voice hoarse. I need to talk to you about something important. Something personal. She looked at me, her smile faltering slightly, sensing my seriousness. Of course, honey. What is it? I paused, then pushed forward. The AncestryDNA kits. Remember the ones I got for Christmas? She nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine. Well, my results, and yours, they match. No surprises there, but... I took another shaky breath. But Dad's, Richard's, it came back, and it says he's not my biological father. The words hung in the air, heavy and blunt. Mom's face drained of all color, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes, usually so warm, now looked like they were staring into an abyss. She didn't say anything, just stared, her breath catching in her throat. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions and a lifetime of buried secrets. Mom just sat there, frozen, her face like a marble statue. The teacup clattered slightly in her hand, but she didn't drop it. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly, each second feeling like an hour. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. Everything else was silent, utterly still. Her eyes, wide and glassy, eventually found mine, and I saw a flicker of something in them. Not anger, not even shame, just a profound, heartbreaking sorrow. Mom, did you know? My voice was barely a whisper. She swallowed hard, her throat working. Liam? Oh, honey. Her voice was a fragile whisper, barely audible. She looked away, towards the window, then back at me, a tear finally tracing a path down her cheek. I knew it was a possibility. A long time ago. A possibility? That phrase hit me like a physical blow. A possibility? My whole life, a possibility? A possibility? What does that even mean, Mom? Who is he then? My real father? The words tasted bitter, foreign on my tongue. I felt a weird mix of rage and an almost childlike desperation for answers. She started to tremble slightly. It was before Richard and I were married. We had broken up for a short time. A stupid fight? You know how young couples are. We were going to different colleges. He was upset. I was upset. I made a mistake. She paused, took a ragged breath. I was lonely. Confused. I met someone. A guy from my dorm. It was only for a few weeks, Liam. It wasn't serious. Not at all. Her gaze dropped to her lap, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Richard and I, we got back together. We realized we couldn't live without each other. He proposed that summer. I found out I was pregnant right after the wedding. The timeline was rushing at me, brutal and clear. Married in August, pregnant right after. And the mistake before they got married. The math was sickeningly simple. So, you got pregnant right after the wedding, but it wasn't Richard's. My brain was trying to catch up, to reconcile this gentle, loving woman with this shattering revelation. She nodded slowly, tears now streaming down her face. I was terrified, Liam. Absolutely terrified. Richard was my whole world. He was so good, so kind. I couldn't bear to lose him, and I was so ashamed. I told him it was his. I had to. I had to. She looked up at me again, her eyes pleading. He was so happy, so excited to be a father. I couldn't take that away from him, from us. My chest felt tight, like a vice. I stood up, walked to the window, ran a hand through my hair. The perfect suburban life, the stock photo family, now looked like a cruel illusion. And Richard, he never knew. He never suspected. It was unfathomable. 35 years. No, she whispered. Never. He never once questioned it. He loves you, Liam, more than anything. He's always been your father. In every way that matters. But it does matter, Mom. It matters a lot. My voice was rising, despite my efforts to keep it steady. My whole life, everything I thought I knew, it's all a lie. I felt a wave of nausea. And who is he? This other guy, do you know his name? Do you remember anything about him? My mind was racing, trying to put a face to this phantom biological father. Was he still alive? Did he know he had a son? She shook her head, her shoulders hunched. His name was Peter Carlson. He was a history major, that's all I really remember. We barely knew each other. After Richard and I got back together, I never saw him again. He transferred schools after that year, I think. I just wanted to forget it ever happened. Peter Carlson. A name. A fleeting shadow. It was so clinical, so detached. My entire existence traced back to a mistake with a Peter Carlson, a history major who probably had no idea I even existed. The details, or lack thereof, were almost worse than the confession itself. It wasn't some grand, passionate affair. It was just a careless error, an inconvenience that became me. I sat back down, feeling utterly depleted. My head was spinning. All those memories of Richard teaching me to fish, cheering at my baseball games, giving me advice on girls, they were still real, weren't they? He was still my dad. But this new information was like an acid, corroding everything, making me question the very nature of those bonds. Does Megan know? I asked, my voice flat. No. Nobody. Just me, she said, her voice trembling. I've carried this secret for so long, Liam. Every single day, it's been a burden. I looked at her, my mother, this woman who had always been my rock, my safe harbor. Now she was a stranger, confessing a secret that had reshaped my entire identity. The pity was there for her years of silent struggle, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of betrayal. And the biggest question, the one that screamed in my head, was what about Richard? My dad. The man who had unknowingly raised another man's son for 35 years. What was this going to do to him? To their marriage? To our family? The thought of him finding out, of his gentle, trusting nature being shattered, was almost unbearable. I just sat there, listening to the incessant tick of the clock, feeling the foundations of my life crumble beneath me. The immediate aftermath of Mom's confession was a whirlwind of raw emotion and logistical nightmares. I left her house that night feeling like I was walking through thick mud, every step heavy. Chloe was waiting up for me, and when I told her, finally, everything Mom had said, she just held me while I cried. Real, ugly sobs. The kind I hadn't cried since I was a kid. The betrayal was crushing, but underneath it, a profound grief for Richard, for his unknowing sacrifice, for the lie he'd lived. My relationship with Mom fractured instantly. We talked, but it was strained, tentative. Every word felt loaded. She called me a few times a day, trying to explain, to apologize, to reassure me that her love for me and Richard was real, despite everything. I couldn't absorb it. Her desperation just made me feel colder somehow. I kept telling her, Mom, it's not about your love. It's about the lie. The decades of lying. I couldn't get past it. She offered to help me try and find Peter Carlson if I wanted. I just shook my head. I wasn't ready for that, not yet. I didn't even know if I ever would be. The biggest practical problem, and the one that kept me up at night, was what to do about Richard. Did he deserve to know? My gut screamed yes. He'd built his entire life, his family, on a foundation of sand, and he deserved the truth. But then my heart twisted thinking of his reaction, his kind, gentle face, crumpling under the weight of such a revelation. It would destroy him, and it would certainly destroy their marriage, their entire world. My sister Megan was firmly against telling him. When I finally got her to understand the reality of the situation, she was devastated, but her immediate reaction was protective of Richard. Liam, you can't tell him. It will kill him. It will destroy everything. Mom kept it a secret for a reason. For his happiness. For us. She was crying, begging me. She saw it as saving Dad, keeping his world intact. I saw it as perpetuating a lie. The arguments with Megan were brutal. We'd go back and forth for hours on the phone, neither of us able to convince the other. She'd bring up their finances, their retirement, their routine. They just built that sunroom, Liam. They're planning a trip to Ireland next year. You're going to blow up their entire life over a technicality. I knew it wasn't a technicality, but I understood her fear. They were almost 60. This wasn't some young couple who could just pick up the pieces. This was their whole existence. Work became my escape, ironically. I'm a software engineer, so I could just bury myself in code. Let the logic and structure numb the chaos in my head. Chloe was incredible through all of it. She listened without judgment, offered comfort without pushing. She suggested therapy, and though I initially resisted, I eventually booked an appointment. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who wasn't directly involved. One unexpected discovery came from Mom's side. After a few days, when she seemed to grasp that I wasn't going to just get over it, she dug out that old box from her closet I'd stumbled upon as a kid. Inside, tucked beneath old letters and dried flowers, was a small, faded photograph. It was of a young man, probably early 20s, with a mop of light brown hair and a shy smile. On the back, in faded ink, it simply said, Peter, 83. My mom had kept a photo of him all these years. It wasn't a grand love token, she explained, just something she had from that brief, confusing time. She said she sometimes looked at it, wondering, but never dared to keep it anywhere visible. Seeing his face, knowing he was my biological father, felt strange. There was no instant connection, no recognition. Just a vague curiosity and a deepening sense of the profound secret that had shaped so much. This photo, this ghost of a person, felt like another piece of the puzzle, but it didn't solve anything, only added more questions to an already overwhelming pile. I still had no idea what to do. The options felt like different shades of awful. Tell Richard and shatter his world, or keep the secret and live with the knowledge that the man I called Dad was living a lie. And what about Megan? Our relationship was strained, and I couldn't lose her too. The weight of this secret was crushing me, and the recovery attempts felt like trying to patch a gaping hole with a thimble. It's been 3 months since that AncestryDNA notification. 3 months of living with this secret, this incredible, life-altering secret. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Evelyn Hayes, has been a lifeline. She's helped me understand that it's okay to feel conflicting emotions. Love for my mom, anger at her deception, profound sadness for Richard, and even a strange sense of loss for the identity I thought I had. We've talked a lot about the difference between a biological father and a father. And while I logically understand Richard is my dad in every meaningful way, the biological truth still stings. I haven't told Richard. Not yet. I just can't bring myself to do it. Every time I see him, his face so full of genuine warmth and love, I picture the hurt that would flash in his eyes, and I just freeze. My sister, Megan, and I are slowly mending things. She understands my perspective a little better now, though she still firmly believes keeping the secret from Richard is the right, albeit painful choice. Mom is trying, really trying. She sends me texts, calls, tries to bridge the gap. It's hard. I respond, I try to be civil, but that easy affection, that deep trust, it's just not there anymore. I don't know if it ever will be. This whole thing has made me question everything. My past, my identity, the nature of family. I learned that what you think is true can be shattered in an instant, and that people you love can carry unimaginable burdens. It's taught me a lot about empathy, I guess, realizing how complex human beings are, how even good people can make choices that have devastating long-term consequences. I become more guarded, more cautious, but also, paradoxically, I feel a stronger bond with Chloe. She's seen me at my absolute lowest, and she's been unwavering. I guess for the future, I'm still figuring things out. I'm putting off having kids for a bit because suddenly I'm thinking about genetics in a way I never did before. Who will my children look like? What family stories will I tell them? Will I ever find Peter Carlson? Will I ever tell Richard? I don't know. The weight of this decision to tell or not to tell feels immense. I spend a lot of time just watching Richard, looking for something, anything, a sign that he knows, or that he'd be okay. But he just goes on oblivious, and it just breaks my heart every time. So, yeah, that's where I'm at, just trying to navigate this absolutely insane reality. It feels good, actually, to write it all down, to put it out there into the void, to hear from others who might have gone through something similar. What would you do? How do you live with this?